For my annotated timeline, I made paper slides. This is something that most elementary students can do in pairs or in small groups. They would just draw their pictures and write out their narration and record one person pulling the pictures as another person reads the narration. So this is The History of Special Education by Kim Hayes. Before 1954, most students with disabilities did not get an education. There were some schools that were provided for particular disabilities, but for the most part, most students without disabilities did not attend school. In 1954, Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education changed that. This was actually a decision about racial segregation, but it was widely interpreted to give the right to free public education to all races, genders, and abilities. In 1965, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was passed. That act allowed funding for students with disabilities. In 1973, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act allowed students with disabilities to participate in any programs or activities that they want that receive federal funds. After 1975, many of the students began to attend schools. 1975, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act was passed, and that gave the right to free public education to all children with disabilities. Also in 1975, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was passed. This provided that schools must meet the individual needs of each child with disabilities, and that they needed to prepare those children for college and career and an independent life. This also allowed for students to be in a classroom or be in an area that is the least restrictive environment. By 1997, most children were in school from the ages of 6 to 18. The EHA Amendment of 1997 made sure that all students received a meaningful education and that they had measurable goals that were assessed yearly. In 2002, President Bush signed the No Child Left Behind Act. This required that special education teachers must have a special license, and that some students with disabilities would participate in state assessments. In 2004, we had the IDEA Amendment, and that amendment provided for the early start of 3 to 5-year-olds with disabilities into the education system. So at this point, students with disabilities were ensured an education from the age of 3 to the age of 21. In 2010, Rose's Law was passed that changed the terminology in most of the previous acts and amendments and took away the nomenclature of mental retardation and changed it to read a person with intellectual disabilities. In 2015, President Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act. This act has a goal that all students would graduate from high school ready for college and career success. And this required all states to have state assessments. Thank you for listening.